What's up, guys? It's Thursday, market's closed. So let's recap some of the key themes. Actually, today I thought it would be a little bit of a boring day at some point because it was obvious. Well, in my opinion, it just feels like everyone's waiting for this Friday NFP number to come out, and I don't think we're going to get much direction until that number comes out. Having said that, there were some interesting trends, just small ones that you could pick up from, which I'll go through now. So just before we do that, let's look at the SPY, which had trouble breaking higher. Maybe they're also waiting for the Friday number to see if it can touch this second resistance. You can see that around, let's call it 378-ish, it's just having trouble on the daily, closing above that. And today we didn't even take out yesterday's high, so I'm going to call it sideways action, although we were down 1%, at least in the SPY, a little less in the NASDAQ, same thing in Dow and less in the Russell. So I'll call it a sideways day. I think we're just waiting for Friday. The more I think about Friday, if there's a good number, then maybe the market will say, okay, well, if the economy is still good, you can take higher rates. And if the number's bad, then I don't necessarily think the market's going to say, okay, here's more of a reason that the Fed will not raise rates as aggressively. I just feel like, okay, the number's bad, then the economy is bad. I just have a feeling that the market will go down kind of regardless of what the number is. But when there's a big number that comes out, typically, and I've noticed this a lot, especially a long time ago, and a little less now, but still, there's a sort of swing in both directions. It's almost as if you can buy anything, and then a few minutes later, you'll be able to sell it for profit, even if it goes down. There's just a swing that's exaggerated in both directions. But obviously, eventually the market chooses a direction, and by end of day, you've got you can tell the market's digested it and gone a certain way. So I just feel like there'll be a bit of a swing, but ultimately the market will decide, and I still think that it will ultimately decide to go down. So I don't know if this second resistance will get hit. If it does, if tomorrow we hit this resistance, it's because of a massive move up, and that'll be pretty bullish for a Friday weekly close here. Even if it touches it and comes back down, I can't see it touching it and then coming all the way back down. So, it's almost 4% move, which it's not going to do even on this Friday day. So I just feel like, yeah, I just feel like it ultimately will go lower. Actually, I'm not sure about this resistance tomorrow. It's a bit too much to ask for. But again, if we do sort of venture towards there, it must be pretty bullish, maybe going into this third resistance next week. But I'm more of the opinion that we're going to go down. We're going to go lower. So let's look at the Nasdaq. Same thing, absolutely the same thing. I'm not even going to bother talking about it. I'd just be reiterating the same thing. Dow Jones was extra weak. Look at that. It actually went lower than yesterday's low of day. So that's pretty low. I mean, that's pretty weak. Wouldn't take much for this to start flushing and going back down to this area. The Russell, yeah, also quite weak. I mean, it went all the way. Actually, at one point, it took out yesterday's high. It went all the way up to Tuesday's high, but came down so much that well, I only closed down 0.5%, so you could still say it's relatively strong compared to the others. However, the VIX up 6-7%. That's more than we've seen the last few days. It was seeing relative strength here, so maybe that's also saying something. I just feel like the market is anticipating a bad number tomorrow, and I think that it's going to react badly for the stock market. So the market will go down, the VIX will go, test 32 and maybe even higher. I don't know. Is that asking too much? Yeah, okay, maybe 32, 33. And then next week, the VIX is going to look very good. So if the VIX does go up here and closes around here, it will look very good for next week to break out and, test 35 and then maybe even high 30s. And that would equate to the market basically looking next week to very early on, maybe on Monday, Tuesday, testing its lows. And this kind of chart pattern here where you're trying to form a double bottom, you have this fake out and goes back up. A lot of people, you see this type of chart patterns on the 1 minute, the 3 minute, the 15 minute, obviously because it's a representation of price action. But one thing, a lot of people don't like stop losses because because the algorithms can read your order, they can just take you out, buy it back lower, and then just swing it all the way up. Now, that's true, that happens a lot. And I don't like stop losses. I never use them actually. I use sort of mental limit sells. So if I really think it's going to flush and I'm watching the stock, hopefully I'm watching it, then I'll just drag and drop my sell, instantly. Like, okay, I'm out. And the market won't know that I'm doing that until the moment I've done it. There's no order pending in there that the market makers or the algorithms can read and manipulate. I just sort of throw in there limit. I sort of drag and drop it. It's kind of like a market order, instant sell. So that's if I really believe that it's going to go down. But sometimes if I think it's going to go down, I still leave it. It goes down, it swings back up, and then I'll sell it even higher than I otherwise would have sold it. But anyway, I feel like, okay, that happens on the 1 minute, the 3 minute, intraday day trading. But on sort of the daily chart, which is what we're looking at, it also kind of happens. You've got this stop loss fake out, it goes back up, but still, and my thesis remains, I thought maybe we get up here, but now I'm changing my mind, but we could still go lower. I still think we're going to go ultimately, whether we go there or not, I still think we're going back down here, testing it and flushing lower and down to new lows, down to 340 on the SPY, for example, and then 320, and then 300, But I just feel like it's kind of done the same thing here. It's sort of faked out a lot of people on the stop losses. It's going up, people are getting bullish. Whether it stops here or there, it's going to go back down again. And I just recognize that chart pattern, and it just reminds me of the sort of stop loss feature that a lot of people fall for. Where's your stop loss? Well, it's in my head, and I still don't recommend stop losses because I just had bad, sort of rookie experiences where I happen to be the guy who's just stopped out at the very bottom, and then I sold. And for certain stocks, sometimes you're not trading the most liquid stock, and then it's just you're selling to the absolute lowest buyer, and then it goes all the way back up, and you just feel like you've been completely hard done, and that probably is the case. The more liquid a stock, the less likely you're going to get that done to you. But generally speaking, stop losses don't work too well. So yeah, I think the market's going to go lower tomorrow. If I had to choose, if it goes higher, then we've got this resistance, but it's asking a bit too much at this point. And fundamentally, macroeconomically, I just feel like the NFP number will be taken as a negative for the stock market, kind of whichever way it goes. So let's look at yields. Okay, well, let's ignore the 1 year because there's a bit of a break in the chart. This obviously didn't happen. This would require QE infinity squared or something. Let's work on the 2 year. Now, yesterday I mentioned that it was interesting that the 2 year, the yields in general were going up, even though the market was going up, and that we're pretty close to the highs, and the markets are not exactly near their lows. And actually, that happened again today. Okay, the market went down, yields went up, but we're probably 1 day away from reaching the high here on the 2 year, and the 2 years the one that's priced in the highest in terms of percentages. But it's the same trend. Look at the 5 year. It's basically 1.5, 2 days away from its peak. And the market isn't 1 or 2 days away from its low. It's more like, you know, 3 or 4. I just feel like there might be a bit of a disconnect taking place here. But maybe it'll, resume its similarities very quickly. But I just feel like yields are not converting to sort of the SPY dropping at the moment, or the market's dropping. The 10 year, one more day, probably takes one more day, and the NFP day could do it. So tomorrow you might have yields. Yeah, definitely. You could definitely have yields basically testing their highs. You could have the 10 year testing 4%. Who knows, maybe even closing above 4%. And what would the SPY be doing there? I mean, you're not really going to get a minus 4% day. You could have a minus 3. Yeah, by then we're pretty much on par with each other. But I think, again, yields are the most important thing, and they are basically very close to testing their highs. If tomorrow's NFP number, whatever it does to the stock market, if it sends yields up, I'm sorry, but stock market has to go down. And if it wants to go up, it's not going to go up as much as it otherwise would. So watch out for yields. Yesterday's trend continues, and tomorrow could really just throw everyone from bullish to bearish again. And same goes with the European markets. Of course, they all sort of follow each other. The British yields are also going back up. Remember, it was the Bank of England that sort of made all the markets reverse a little bit there. But maybe that's all it was. Maybe it was just a very short-term reversal before we just resume regularly scheduled programming, which is just flushing down in a bear market. And this is just a small bear market rally. So let's look at the dollar, which did the same thing as yields. So we bounced so far. Looks like that 110, 111 was support. Let's see what happens tomorrow. This will definitely move tomorrow. It's just going to be yields, the dollar, the market, and gold I'll be watching, which is basically the main assets I watch anyway. Let's move on to gold. Gold actually was okay today. I was expecting a bit more weakness. It sort of did a bit of a sideways move. I just thought it would be a bit weaker today, actually, but kind of not much of a, not much to talk on. It was just a bit of a sideways day. I mean, look, it doesn't get more sideways than that. That's just a doji. But to me, it was not as weak as it should have been. So I would say it's still pretty strong. I mean, look at this sort of hammer, if you want to call it the hammer. That was quite promising. And then we've got a bit of a doji, so it's really pure sideways action. Looks like we're just waiting for tomorrow. We're just waiting for tomorrow. You just have to trade. So there you go. But one other point. So I mean, one of the main points I wanted to bring up today was the fact that yields were disconnecting a little bit, and watch out because they're one day away from maybe throwing all the markets off a cliff. And the other point I wanted to say was that the GDX, the miners were relatively strong. So look, you had gold and silver down, you had the markets down. So why would the miners be up? There's really no reason for that. And they've had a hell of a run. But they were up and they closed a high of day, just like yesterday. And they should have come down more yesterday and definitely more today. So for me, these are precious metal miners, very strong. And you're looking at this chart pattern and it's looking really like the bottom was in. Now I think if the market just crumbles to new lows, it has to go lower. It just has to. But if it doesn't, I mean, if this goes up when the market goes down now, this is just as bullish. Just I would really buy back what I sold even down here because long term I'm bullish, and if it starts to go up when the market goes down, then because it's going to go up when the market goes up, then there's just no reason to not own it because what are you trading? You're trading an asset they're mining out the ground, which is inflation hedge, missed inflation hedge. So yeah, very, very impressive. And I was watching Newmont, which is my heaviest holding, that also closed at high of day. And I just feel like I look at some of the individual charts like Newmont and they're just ready to go higher. Now, if the market starts to flush and the miners go down, then that's what expected. And to be honest, I look forward to that because I've sold here, I've sold there already. So let's call my average in between. Although I did sell a bit more here, a bit heavier at least. So fewer mines, but heavier amounts. So my average sell between these two is, let's say, whatever, around here, 25.5. I would probably start buying if we go down here, 24-ish, and then more, the lower we go, the more I'm going to buy. Because to me, this has shown what I want. This is like bottoming pattern, at least. Like down here is very strong support. And if we go lower, fine, I'll buy even more. For it to go even lower, you must have a complete market crash happening and then taking gold and silver down, the dollar even up to 120, the DXY. So for me, very, very strong. I'm not buying here. I'm not selling here. I've already sold here. I'm not buying because I've already sold. The next sell is going to be up here, and it's going to be pretty light because I think it can really run. It could even squeeze. Um, so yeah, just something to pay attention to. Very strong, the miners. Almost no reason for it to continue being strong where it is. Finally, I will look at the Bitcoin, which I didn't even look at today because I was looking at gold and yields more. I was also looking at some alternative stocks I'll get to. To be honest, I said it yesterday, Bitcoin has sort of failed to impress me. It had sort of it's run out of time for me. It should have reacted higher 1 or 2 days ago, and now it's just, I mean, look, technically it's broken out of this downtrend line. It should have squeezed higher. The old school Bitcoin would have done that. This one is just sort of, boring, weak, sideways down. And if the market goes down tomorrow, and I've said this, down we go. And then what happens on the weekend? Because the market's going to look really bad. Yields are going to be at their highs of the local highs, looking to go higher. So Bitcoin's probably going to anticipate more of a market flush on Monday. So what's it going to do during the weekend? If we end lower on Friday, it's going to flush down to 17,500. And then by then, the chart will look really bad. You got to imagine what the chart will look like if the market does what I think it's going to do tomorrow. And that is, it's just going to be a really weak Bitcoin chart. And guarantee, in my opinion, it will flush 17,500 down to 13,000. Not in one day, but there are a lot of stops, a lot of stops out there, and all the algorithms can see it. You can see it in the crypto world. So watch out, Bitcoin, if the NFP sends the markets lower. Finally, normally I would end there, but there's just a little breaking news. I do own this stock here, TLRY. It's a marijuana stock. I own it because because it's a good sort of trading stock. I've been trading it for a while. But President Biden, he pardoned he pardoned people who were in possession of what was it again? Anyway, there's this election play that happens now and then, which is, are the Democrats or whoever, but in this case, are Democrats going to legalize marijuana federally, basically to buy votes? And Biden hinted at that because there was some news that he was going to pardon those of possession, of marijuana. So not really heavy drug dealers, no one to do, not the kind of people who are charged with aggression in any way. It's just you possess a little bit. And that went down pretty well. That was a few hours ago that broke. And, you don't really need to read the news too much. The point is, it's playing into the marijuana stocks related to the election. And so it's popped. The whole sector popped. And, I'm just planning my next couple of sales. I sold a little bit at 399 and 362. Basically, I saw it pop. I didn't know why. I didn't care. I just sold a little bit. I trimmed. Then I read the news. I thought it'd go higher. It did. So I sold at 399. And now I've just got a bunch of machine gun sales, like small orders, but basically next one at 449, then 499, 549, 599. Then it starts to space out a bit more because you can see this can really squeeze. Really squeeze. And actually, this is not even the long, that's the real chart. It's ridiculous. So, look how it can squeeze. That's why I'm not selling that much. They're really like 5% sales each time. So anyway, I have these alternative stocks for these types of reasons. They're 3D printing stocks. Another one is a shrooms company stocks, a bit like marijuana, same kind of one, but that hasn't reacted. The shrooms sector haven't reacted the way the marijuana sector reacted. Crypto miner, some sort of alternative milk company, Paramount streaming. I won't go into them unless there's a very exciting day. But the point is, yeah, it's just something interesting that happened today, and I feel like it will keep running tomorrow. So if you're interested in the marijuana sector to trade, then that could be interesting. But I would never buy a stock that's just done this. But when you zoom out and you see that, and you realize that it's a multi-day trade, then it could be interesting. Anyway, that's it for today. To be honest, I don't want to spend too long. I already have, and tomorrow is the big fireworks day. So watch out for yields, watch out for the market, and watch out for miners for those of you who follow the mining sector. Otherwise, good luck, happy trading, and good evening.